Cindy 你在不在？
我在。
OK， 好，那行，那个你让，好，没关系没事，我把那个我的这种翻译箱群里了，然后你让玉诺进那个群。
对对，玉诺在那边，那你进去跟他 testing 吧，因为我这边做不了那个啊。
我还是没看到他人啊，他叫什么名字了？哎呦，玉诺真的是，
不管他，你看一下，我不能在这边讲了，这是他们的主频道。
OK， 好，行。
然后你去那边，我们在 WhatsApp 那边说。
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa teaching with Drupon, Rinchen, Dorjee, Rinpoche. We'll begin with opening prayers.
Goodbye.
Where have you? Are you going to feed the cats?
I did already.
Did you?
Yes, sir. Why?
evening, everyone. We'll thank you for joining us for the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa teaching with Drupon Rinchen Dorjee Rinpoche.
Oh, this is a good time. Okay. Diego, hey, Diego, come inside. Come on, Diego.
Okay? No.
The end of the game.
Any children's?
All mother sentient beings, especially the enemies of awakening, obstructors of harmony, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and experience happiness, be separated from suffering, swiftly will establish in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious liberation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies of awakening, instructors of harmony, create obstacles on my path to liberation.
I think you just make a point, okay?
Be separated from suffering.
Come here.
Just
Just stay.
Make a point.
Oh, it's in
Somebody is reading.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Yeah, okay.
Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind.
That means Mandela, Frank Mandela. Saje Boju
Jukshin Tok Tram Rirabling Shin Degem Hadi Sanje Jina Huayi Drokunanda Jingdu Chubar Shok Guru Dewata Kiniratna Mandala The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, and the sun and moon. As a Buddha field, I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha fields.
Samchen
Samkhya
Nanje Sambat
sampadam loye chedrag jitawar chechung tumong tekpayi choki korlo kordoso. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the 2 vehicles and their combination according to the dispositions and likewise the mental capacities of sentient beings.
Okay, so they have the tene dangaran so katsamla re pe ti ning na mo te ma shuru wa katsante ta ze ning na mo parang to du na mo ti shuri tene ta se ning aran so ti ta malare pa ko damya ti ko serwa
You can hear me, yeah? Okay. So the last week we have give a little bit of a prelude, an introduction to Milarepa and the background of his family line. And today we will continue with his actual life and how he was born. Can you hear me? Cô tụi Nga kìa cha. Wait.
yeah, I don't know the baby I think yeah
Cái cô cái tụi can sao? Drupon cô cái tụi. Drupon doesn't hear me.
no less
On the live stream only.
I think there's no again but
Cô cái tụi.
ta kondo ta dale
Đâu đâu sao?
ta ta shin le ta ta nyama khala ona dra le ma so
Thế nên ngày anh kia show cô. Wait. Anh kia show rồi. So I'm going to repeat because it seems that people at the center didn't weren't able to hear. So anyways, last week we started with like an introduction to Milarepa, like a prelude to his background, his family line. And so today we will continue with the way in which he actually took birth.
tene ta ti ne ga phe la ga phe ke se yong nyang sa ga jian zhong tang den ba chu ne mla xerab jian chen ho de ma bo che de chang da se chu su song la song le yuan guo wei ce se chu po ro ke lo dong da ra ba na dar ma ja lo ni je ama la ma ji be ke ya ji ke sa de huang qian zang de dong le jiang nga la
这个课程是主要是要连接。
后来没做嘛，没放弃吧？你说说前一个过吧。
上个礼拜呢，我们开始的给予这个简介，有关于。
Hello, something is a little funky here.
我在那里忙个的时候，后来不接备，后来没做吧，没放弃吧？你要是说一个过。 往前压了这边去，都有那一边压心头，你的我拉说后来没打啥了，才能研究办的了，或者来没往为，他连后节用都办的，拖把个些吃吧，穷的没了，拖把个些吃吧大茶松生的有出穷的没了，拖把个让大，民众上不去的结巴见面，今年俺那个一年不，土地三个把些穷是没那么拖把个没打把来，穷都是了，穷都是，俺可能俺路些，我他这里。 真的就是没来的吧？这他阿妈这里眼了，可能真的提高了。这可能去也听没来，现在不见成实的。 这呀老巧的还有我的是加拉安，然后是加拉那边我加拉，这是马前强我错，把我强我错，我这里从家小镇罗的是，我这从家在从对真的从家从谁的，但是没来这边接的是东个，东大长波是接我是我小东大长波是接红对真的，我们讲这个节没来写了不讲，他说的用我去，就让不会接从这会接的是没多个都是没同事，没多么的我这七个都是。我听就是这经常说在老的是也别干的，这当啊，你就把或者马上这个嘛是没打啥，从那没苦啊，不见都是苦啊咱们真的苦啊咱们对每个是搞我穷从是我真的没在拖把干是，多钱是大的是，这那怎么来的把这个说的呢？这没多么要不起的，是把钱都当，这其实的真的。没来的吧？今年不有的，今年不有的，真的没怎么没啥，拖把个大把，真这都是我他曾经讲那边穷的是。
So where we left off, so is where his father and the mother had come together, and so then at some point, so the father, Milarepa, he was bringing some trading goods from the south. So apparently the family was living kind of in the vicinity of Dakse, a village in the north. And so before he had returned, and Milarepa was born. And so his mother sent like the message through a messenger to inform. So she dispatched a messenger with a message to the place where he was staying, and so then this letter said. So that was in the first month of the Tibetan year, which is like in fall, and so the letter reached the father, and it said, "A son was born to you, and quickly come back to name him and to celebrate his naming. There's this naming celebration, like a festival, a ceremony." And so then, the moment the father heard that, he was overjoyed, and he said, "I have already named my son, and his name shall be Tupaga, which means like delightful to hear." Because the moment he heard his son was born, he was delighted, because he said there's only one son in the generation of this family, and so hearing that he was born, he was delighted. So his name was Tupaga. So then he returned, and they performed this naming ceremony. And so then he was given the name Tupaga, delightful to hear. And also Milarepa actually had a very pleasant voice. And so then also when people heard his pleasant voice, they would say that, that name is very fitting. Tupaga is a very fitting name.
真的讲，打这里马蹄就真的老些东北子，阿妈拉古莫节这边古莫节是打是，见面头，别打是，他见面的是的话，才见面差别打是。
Maybe it's a different length than I had from before.
公节是从古莫节，是古莫节，才去查你明星你去了，是的，从有的去，你嘞有把汤，这样有那卡扎汤，往这把有门那么这个，那么他年代他先把那帮助跑去把穷位子，有门那么就过了，过了不啦，全部。 有的加班都做破锅巴啦，拿去吧，健康吧，拿去带，泡沫健健康啦，这种小班都是规模特别硬的，没啦，都这检测一，我真的做工作把它接发 jobs， 真的，我当不来不得，啥没来的，我当没啥的，这工工作细去干了，但是什么的，泡沫健充的是因为，但国贸机是大的，是国贸机，地方工机别单工期了，别单是见面的是搞笑噻，他见面的是。 我现在对别单工期现在穷，真的工资在穷穷讲别，可能是就出破一，可能你不几步有的，啥几步是的，因为现在突破突要不，啥几步，我听着有的啥，有种题目是说看了不晓得呢，工作啥些钱吧，算强的的是，你说别中不弄啥，我说那他可能是就要求别往前说，我他听着强的都是，工作别好像第二别人都什么上面听着老晓得是。 我他提出那了，他没来写了讲是呀给呀可以呀提名呀都这性别的话，我们来都这性别也是在工作，他在工作，要不去，我咱全部提出去这种的话。
So then at the age of 4, when Milarepa turned 4 years old, his sister was born, and so her birth name was Gomoki, and then her nickname later became Beta. So she was known as Beta Gunki, and so that was her birth name. And the family was very wealthy and well-renowned in the region. The people throughout the region actually said that were amazed because they said that they are foreigners into this region, and still they are more wealthy and more powerful than the locals here. So then at some point, Mila Shera Gyamtsen's father, Mila Dorjee, he passed away, and the family performed really a vast funeral ceremony.
但是个当别了，其他你把这东亚人把碰到穷别去，头娘是把是，他东亚人把的，他就当他俺说没来的把别刚刚忙不，他那里忙吃药的，我这刚刚吃药的，在其他part的刚刚吃不了吃药，在其他他在特别吃这边吃完了我吃药，他这边开吃不了这，不让吃完了我吃药，对吧？这就没来他在没来这怕是他给他吃过呀，在其他他就先听的那啥的。 Milarepa se ti do de ti cha se man da nge ma ja shi da gang nge ti mi na da mila repa se yu zi ma ze xin da chuo chuo so ya bu nyam na qi xie na ang ze chuo chuo like ge da qin bu cha ya de ta du man de ce chong yu res.
And so this completes the first section, which is Milarepa's birth. And then the second section or chapter is it's called his encounter of hardships, of suffering. And Milarepa encountered many hardships throughout his life. And so maybe from on the one hand, it may seem to be a lot of misery, but on the other hand, all of these troubles actually became supporting factors for his Dharma practice. And also are the reason why now everyone still hears about Milarepa's name, why he is well known. And that is really only because of that. If Milarepa had never encountered any difficulties, then perhaps no one would know about him right now. And so he had shown if, despite difficulties, if one practices the Dharma authentically, then one can become just like that. So the second chapter is a chapter on Milarepa's encounter of hardships.
真的咱那里在那个东岸的把碰到今年伢们些把来穷去把拉马拉也当车的，我家忙不头伢们些种把其他拉是他来穷的，他讲了也把车啥都别东岸忙不用，看路人是他上他不来穷是吧？车人是他。
And so then the chapter begins with Rinchen asking Milarepa, and he said that so after you had lost your father, you encountered many hardships. So tell us about those hardships that you encountered.
真的是咱俺老对咱们这边对这些也没来现在讲讲听用给差不些。 谁呢？面把当毛把那么的给，没错吧？龙点年这那么讲没错吧？些可让样去吧？他就那个，俺呢年人找个些有没亲戚，找把工啥的，有没哪上街吧？就上街，他们派去有些自己就吧，看见一个街上呢，有些拖把着，同对那了，俺他俩的，你的没同完都人，等那眼分得来。 他穷完都别去，可趟俺那做起别去，年过呢就是别去，咱你不能去挪那是压着吧，挪那他大陆说大陆中挪那大陆中，那我们出什么时候就被新康人们他没去吧，康巴他我呢，求着吧说对呢，这得是我说。 图他王族他这把所有所的多呢没想了默默过吧有本的那参起恰些这我让给结束当呢知道了的气功节我让分的清楚没办法了这话了做些切part 阿克安尼了做了分的清楚拍话当这些当年在起了我让那么说呢我呢他会没办法去分这就这话没这话没不总结都起了ci a khutang ane zo be ne ne gun xie so do tu man ju ye nga xie tu kong tu da wo sen ne chung so ba de ne da ne da res da ya mala sherab jam sen te da na de res na de da nga zo da member da chama yo ra nga zo hu na ta mo ja ya se je yo我这没接不了，他这上面没话的，没把上面他炒个嘛的，他讲了，这年这种个他炒下嘛都是那咱的了，炒下有什么的上，真的这个那一个他的可能给他是话他出，我真的他炒嘛的上，真的可能是年的啊个那做这边炒嘛做给当呢，他在就那炒嘛的，他是有肯自己热气，嘛我把他去那做热气。但多对那当然你没用到嘛，就是这嘛这些当做像啥讲呢？真的就拿什么把地过来是，我才成立拉来是多对成立拉来是。那对，就拿被马步康把先拿了这种他也马步就非常嘛。然后看第四个人其实对给啥当时面最长嘛，前两年都是这嘛，还是非常的可能。这些讲啥讲呢？真的，把这热气是拉回去。
So then at some point, father, Milarepa Gyamtsen, he fell ill. And so at that time, though the doctors and some divinations were made. And so the doctors and those who made divinations all agreed that he will not recover from his illness. And also he himself actually decided that it is time to die. So everyone decided that, everyone believed that he is going to die. So then the time of his death had come. And when the time of his death approached, the family was invited, led by the uncle and the aunt and everybody else. And the father gave his last testament and spoke his will. And he said, "No, I shall not recover from this illness. I will die." So now my son is still quite young. We are very wealthy. So as my son is still very young, for now, keep this wealth, we can spend a small portion after I have passed away, but then the rest is given to my son. Keep safeguarded for him until he is old enough. And when he reaches age, he will marry the girl Tseze. And at that point, you must return the money to him, the wealth to him. And so their wealth included houses and fields of crops and precious metals like gold and silver and cattle and so forth. And so all of that, the majority of that was to be returned to Milarepa later when he would get married to Tsetse. So that was the father's last will. And then he passed away.
Some people here, okay. Cindy may here. Today, that's a Milarepa low doing on it. What Yapshirab Jensen translated.
When the father of Sherab Gyamtsen, Milarepa Gyamtsen, passed away, Milarepa was 7 years old.
Today, that's when the March to the that transfers, today, or the Yabdi Igdon Nam cheese, that then Tedar tea, 他挪nam估计看见的嘛，让娘在个间让差起的就那看这个吧，那估计说进来去被二块头安内拉所进呢，这每年其中中国这我们每年都们就这挪nam看见些，你就给差起现在真的你想不到这些。他们说个老旧车讲年嘛，那个跑哪什么啊？估计跑哪什么安内去，人家他们去起码了，我的去。ที่มาไม่เนี่ยละส่วนเรื่องที่เสนอนี้มาไม่ส่งนั้นนอร์วันที่มาจงยาที่สิ่งนี้ที่ดูอาคุเกยอกุนเพลที่ดูอันนี้คือยอตัวชิลาตัวบาเลวงคนเนี่ยชอบละท่าที่บาเดเมคือแก่ละสิจริงบาคนเนี่ยเลี้ยที่มีที่จีกูบาเลยยันละสัมผัสสักการสุดเนี่ยตัวกูเงียบบ้างตัวจี看到家了ที่บาจ้าทางจ้าทางบ่สื่อนี่เลยว่าแต่ที่จะบูสิ่งแค่ทางส่วนมันนี่เลยชงวันทุ่มวันกุญแจ토바 샘 무슨 중군 치마 쳐와서 아그 안에 이장 고랍들이 재미있지 마음이라 두고 당스다 와다지 지류드네 다 코나 야 총사도 되게사데 있죠 다티 주노 학마테 뭐 셴바서 소게 다 라나 다 저거 냥사가 제모랑 야스 텐두 마랑 소티 와르카테 로파디 시고스 워텔라브레스 테라브레스 다화르 다다디 Milarepa 아장제 요사로 Milarepa 아메 민고제 요사로 와체다 디가 나기케 센제세 파와 소케 다 냐리 마냥사가 제모라 냐네 야레스 어디 교환을 지나 아쿠네리 가서 소미로 파티 시샤나제 라비 데 아쿠게다 카첸리 아쿠네니 뭐 카첸리 스타 등이니 그냥 알고레스 세네 다제 후 포원 폴 펜토야 올 주차마 아쿠키디 스타 제베 제르문도 나데 뭐 다 젠찬도 요라서 소이는 상마 안에 키디 스타 소아나 프랑스 고피아자 상마 대치송 대치류세네 다 코니 도우지면 세 프랑스 파티레스 나치테 일가레드네 아쿠케 요코치고레스 제 신간 데비아 소소 요코치 용가레드네 안에 키제 가르제 야야 내 지리 다 아쿠키 지리스 벨레 지리 안에 군가다 회티 소제 치쇼자라테 안에 요치 다 상마도 배 쪼보 치사야 다 치사야 제 도스라고 지게로 와샤테 쪼보 텐루디 텐 투로토도 공야미 탑반도 바레스 와테루치리 레간 딱바치고레스 테 라파스소 케 와테네 상마도 배 인간 손 루포 상마 자신 자신이 다 차시스 니마 자도 배 넘보 야보레스 테 자도 상마 자신 생차 와테네 테루 차송 스데네 뭐 배자 뭐제 샘충충 제 용나 뭐 샘충충 소제 통나베 매치마 쇼야 와테루 아 청송 스데 뭐 상메다 아까네 뭐 야보 뭐도세 꼬라 마보 라시도 세나 누라자 라파냐 요마 꼬알 마라프샤나 ing ngazo mawini be dugo danso zongdo ina dati dugo cho zeli de na dugo be gangen chiri dugo dan de cho zeli jin Milarepa chon che ya aku de aneni po da Milarepa nyamna ya go che ya aku aneni po ka dil de na Milarepa nyamna se chi to ro wa
so the father passed away and after he had passed away then so the relatives performed all the funeral rites, and so then decided that Nyangsa Garkian, which was the aunt, so she should take care of the remaining wealth after all the funeral rites had been paid for, and so then she was basically placed in charge, and so then. The uncle and the aunt also said that so the uncle Milarepa's other uncle, who was his mother's brother, said that they are of a sincere family and they won't lead us into misery, and therefore we shall allow them to control our wealth, and so whatever assistance she needs, we will help her, the mother, the aunt and the uncle from our side as best we can. And so then this is how the wealth was basically transferred to the aunt and the uncle. And so mainly the aunt, Nyangsa Garkye, was the one who took control over the mothers, the female possessions like the jewels and the gold and the silver and so forth, and then some of the cattle they shared among each other. And so in the end, they placed Milarepa, his mother and sister, into their service, and so said that you have no longer any control over your possessions. And so in this way, they ended up in summertime serving the uncle by working in the fields, and in wintertime serving the aunt by spending their time spinning or like weaving wool. And their food was the same as dog's food. And so dog's food is actually considered the worst food in Tibet. Their clothing were like strips of kind of tattered robes, and their hands were cracked and kind of raw open. Then in the beginning, the hair was shiny, and in the end, the hair became dreaded, and it turned thin and ashen in color. Then Milarepa, as he shared his story, said if anyone with a sensitive mind would have seen us in that state, they would have cried. Tears would have come to their eyes. Our state was so terrible. And so that was Milarepa's kind of beginning. And on the one hand, when we hear that, one may think that this is terrible. He encountered so much hardship. But on the other hand, it is through the hardship that Milarepa encountered the Dharma. So it is actually really due to the kindness of the uncle and the aunt that Milarepa was actually able to practice the Dharma.
Oh, then just on the Aku and the Nibota Kasanga Mala, Milarepa, Yapsi, Punjazik, Yapki, Punjazik, Pugrawak, and then what there was a cheat in it. Tangazo Hoba in Taku and the Lab Grant, Shimba in it, and love you make it what the cheat. What in it that Milarepa, Ameki, Anime, Telabra, Chungsa Bende. Chungsa Bende and those do more down there, those do more down those. The loudest Jim anime no more down there the main charges in Major.
Canada.
They didn't do anime Tamawism to go to dance on Sra. Then I may say Ama Yansa Gajan. Yansa Gajan can Anela, that Chungsa Bende and those do more down there, those do more down, start down gentlemen. Down gentlemen, what in those it is jail, anime do more down there, some love shot is it.
With some of the Lara.
Oh, the Jim commented in La Floresa at the modern desk. What it makes is, the Danjitan Kitampieta, Medadre, Daho Gochendon, several Peraris, what once I said to him, move Jalas, Shimbe Dahoja, Daho the Machilo, Chinangita, who not some Machilo did go. What in the Chilo did Chinang Machilo on your first, that Dahote. What is several Nangita, as on my on Chonsons. In Luton, Malaysia, Jensen Show with CS, Mechagan Guji, Zomka Natawais, Chinor, you do Jerbu Sutan, Sone, I could any hands on by Kanatawan Jones. You mind the Malay Sherajan Sandy, the other Yapo, some console pay game of pay Yapochi is, Jill T Yapochi, Aku and English and those some other. I mean, Ama la, young man, the Gola, Chuchu, Chuma Chung. Really, Naman Lake, Seba Dembando, Mekochu, Mizana, the Tandas, water, Chuayago, Chuma, Ben Jumbo, the Medutari, and it is Lapdos, Amal, Gola, those methods.
So we love to do
Machine Basso, Yamina, Malasha, Jansan, then Yansaka Jampe, Yapo, and Jumbo, your resta. Chua Medun Jumbo, Chuayago, Kayan Jumbo, those, the Medina Jumbo, Major, love those. Children's number like those. Menam Kochuri, Mina, then us, what am I Kochuri made in the rich out of those? But then Tambo Yansa Guardian Chu, Sala, Bono, local Chela, Chung, Lasu Che, Chunya Chelos, Nimata, Yansa Guardian Bear, Chumbo, the local chamber, the marble was or something, Samata, that happened was Melos, Melaka, maybe. What do is lap those? This lap dicks at that was.
So sorry, the Nyangsa Karkin was Milarepa's mother, right? So first it was said that she should take care of her own wealth, but then later it was basically taken from her by the aunt, whose name was Chungtsa Palten. And so the uncle and the aunt, so the uncle was the brother of Milarepa's father, and his wife, which was called the aunt, her name was Chungtsa Palten.
Chungtsa Palten, I cook Singmore.
Singmore. Didn't Singmore to put on
Marima Singmore, main Mala, I make the more down there. Mala, make Laura Mainte.
Oh.
Yeah, Morata, they do put on Ramala.
And the Singmo to put on Anigitane.
Anet is Zingmotor, Mala, Shirab, Mala, Mala Shimba, Mala Akuja. I could sing more, Pamajek Simo.
Did it animate?
They made Anela Gura.
Did it unlatora?
Oh, make a big Simon or what is the Anela Gura? What do you do? What is it? Anet, Amalek, the Akuti, Jimmy Marda.
Yeah. So the aunt was not his wife, but it was his sister, right? So it was Milarepa's uncle's sister, and her name was Chungtsa Palten. So Chungtsa Palten and the uncle were the adversaries who took their wealth. And so anyways, at some point, then Milarepa's mother would give the aunt a different name. So actually her name was Chungtsa Palten, which means it's a good name. Obviously, it means something like the glorious leader of Chungtsa. And so then she renamed her. The mother renamed the aunt, calling her, actually, that's not what you are. She said, what you really are is Dumutakten. And Dumutakten means she's the demoness leader of tigers. And so after that, then the aunt became known as Dumutakten, the demoness leader of the tigers. And so then in those days, there also was a proverb that people would say, and that is, when the false master tries to be the master, then the actual master is kicked out like a dog. And so again, we have the dog here. In Tibet, everything that's kind of a negative, an analogy for anything negative, usually is the dog. The dog is considered something like a lower animal. So anyways, so this is what had become of Milarepa, his sister and his mother. And in the past, when the father, Milarepa Yamtsen, was still alive, everyone was happy and smiled. But later, after he had passed away, and when the uncle and the aunt had taken over all the riches, then everyone was frowning and no one was laughing. And yet people were ridiculing Milarepa's mother, saying that when her husband was still alive and she still had a husband, she was so capable and she had so much wisdom and she could do many things. Now that her husband is gone, she's so incapable. She is completely ridiculous.
Uri la na sai rangjen chas ngala zese ke phame ke kolam somare chis otan zese phama to Milarepa thulo azarware stenos menor masona nor masa tsake simbai saba normina nyam go yame namla nor tingsor choma yi ser otan zese baba to normina ke o mares so what is also me yabo chi din jige tem chira baba to la ngema chuko ja mares jel chuko chung de res ke o ma se samso la dang do chira na nor yu be tu ons wa chira ji ma nor yu ya yu de res samso yang yang dang do tene senga lo jurga lo be ses amala apie chi be shinke shen get 신께 봐 신께 제대 제배선 제배 대중체와 메인 메냐로 동토 주부 용화시 요배세 상부 소남치바 기는建片吧建筑今年怕都做个有吧了养马拉送回去下忙不牛呢那忙不那干么忙不去呢那会忙不强手做的两三个点妈咪罗龙嘛都一般都现在真的给让去看把个些东西连忙不压的等一点二课堂2年做呗2年可能了说个些呢有没有亲戚呢这怕没来写了现在贵一点一开始写前有一个就有吧然后的二课堂2年了下工作堂先要出 top 了出 top 了所以个月说个月给强说这边给多么上波长的是他我真的他我打的那双的这些旁嘛都给吐了甚至啥玩意儿是他就拿名开了嘛或者拿我就是下这个意思so什么时候真就当时都是真的没来的吧老就啊老对真的阿妈没让两三个人没让8月底下来旁嘛就说底下新个底下说的是现在对两三个人没让不知道这我们过去在新个大呢如此啥的我是真的穷就真的提起在强的牛在下的牛我真的他在咱把它说听起多么长嘛是样真看把个东西就那点嘛不加的他真的说听他嘛长嘛的你嘛他们写了变成看前就是没说的啊可按你做起的他长嘛的他说的啦的是没来的别这就那说龙呀那到底你嘛没来写了变成就那说这样做他拉不上来的这种听到 mix access aku aneh ni pola mixie chi di ta ne wa tru chi di ta mo ya bo chi re sta san slam ji
So their state was misery and miserable, and people would slander them. Titis, a girl, his future wife's parents, would give Milarepa clothing and shoes and said that don't see yourself as pitiful. It is okay if it is fine if in the early parts of your life you are not doing well. Wealth will come later, as it has come with your ancestors. And so they consoled him over and over again. Then later, when Milarepa reached the age of 15, a field was given to his mother by her parents, as an inheritance, and so the field was given this name. Had a negative name, but actually was producing excellent harvest, and so his mother's brother, the maternal uncle, cultivated that field and grew some barley, and so quietly stashed away some of the barley. And so then with the excess, he would buy some meat and beer and so forth. And having accumulated some wealth, they organized a ceremony in order to reclaim their wealth, since the time had come. Milarepa had grown up. So they arranged this celebration to announce the reclaiming of their wealth, for which the uncle and the aunt were invited.
真的大阿妈车去为主浪的说老说这边没了没长边强了大车吧那样大车送些东莞一边也没了写了现在各天个些钱准备就有们这边那么二可在安内周边这个那么的年把这样学相补去些钱一个那边安面去一个去通中啊堂这的学边这边那么的透了这边的也怕学门国家通知呢俺偏二可在安内你没有中了广东人样子把透大把俺在会堂这些这些你看清楚新版都给俺去哪就把住这些当那么说吧也不是现行的派去会堂这些就把意思他在阿玛提亚车机那么上面那机浪的但这当然是能强这样给下来过来 我这给家的老表这可能是那他你嘛这趟没跟把上面下过个的是，我这的是他这真的真的没来的比哎呀，他在阿嘛马上去明白提起一个怎么落的是，我这落是对真的听个人就他阿可的安尼你普通话嘛不起松是，我他真就话嘛不起有的是，突然间是呢，他的这些说其他说进是。这可能你不老就俺里头没来的吧？对，他清楚清楚都是，怕就是很这样子，过后路说，然后他在那话在这里去给他拿的是。
So then the ceremony got going. Beer was being poured, and when everyone was served their beer, then the mother stood up in the middle of the guests, and she said, "So now." A letter will be read, which then was read by her brother, the maternal uncle. And the letter he read was Milarepa's father's testament. And so having finished reading the testament, then the mother, Milarepa's mother, said that this is his wish, and now the uncle and the aunt have looked after us for a long time. We are very grateful to them, but now the time has come for my son to marry the girl Tete, and according to his father's testament, we ask you to return our wealth to us.
我真的在阿库的安年尼波在这趟全部去了，我上班没来的呢。那阿库的安年尼波的全部名了，阿库安年尼在那罗阿库安年尼了，门墙中多兰强把汤是，阿库几波送啊，阿库了和忙不有别的安年，阿库你这个这边去一些罗人在康那有把汤，那汤不没他写了，现在可能康上的康的人康进。 生运做他那个你那亚万一，可能去看那打过了这帮你，其他往外去，我是这世界看，你不看，马娘嘛这，和他这，他说成就这样没看蛮通话，但他那那是吧？你就看见一个书籍。 都慢慢是都这么些吧，说吧，你让你那门眼了，往过那去年吃眼睛吧，是吧？是那么点了，哈浪进的先过打，多呢，都把周的刚把打的呢，他的刚把样，你往往一慢慢在切松现在，阿妈呢点下的懂，但是你明星你普通的懂的，但是阿妈呢也没他写了，现在你没有种过了，谁写图工到我谁堂。 那些特工呢？到我是我到这真的大家当工作家全部嘛，因为他阿克特的很忙不有的，是没来的话的，些会去播的哇。这阿克安尼你娘是是几对，这看老是那他阿克安尼你不给，其他没那些啦，就可能就那个嘛的，我那做压力是康巴的、性格的，生命充满也怕压力是，可能些人看我做打火的这类是。 我的就那什么子，打火做这些事，就一个手机上是的，手机是一个是，我是手机的是，就让做这种我做卡拉的做的了是，要不的是，明年吧，那他在网上去这件事，我去了这件个的，他去了他人堂，你买那不去人堂有嘛了，人把地嘛了吧？我在去了让他人把家的是。 没有度假村这里，他给家度假村那都是的，真就现在要电要浪的，阿看那你不三个那里大，真的，刚把头对不对？其实真的，前两天马送现在刚把那个说光个是没事，他前两天马送现阿妈电价在大，关于目前你不但个是不就巴萨的普通人不有，让普通那里大，我真的咱动物的真的。 在其中是阿美他别没那些了，现在我做谁的，但我那别西洋的，我他东岸娘都是这里拉啥的吧。
So then, actually, up until this point, the uncle and the aunt never really agreed with each other, but didn't really get along. But then, at this point, when this was said, they united and said, "So." You say you have possessions. Where are your possessions? In the past, when Milarepa Gyaltsen was still alive, we loaned him all this wealth, a house and all the fields and all the wealth. Then later, when he died, all these possessions were merely returned to us. Well, what do you own? You own none of it. And then who wrote this testament anyways? So actually, we were very kind to you. You are truly miserable beings, and we were we kept you alive. We made you not die from starvation, and still you dare to say things like that. And so then they again said this proverb and said to say, as the saying goes, when a wicked man is granted power, they will measure out the water by kind of the spoonful. And so basically they were very upset, and the uncle blew his nose, and he rose from his seat, and he smacked them, and he hit them and stomped them with his feet, and he asked them to leave. And at that point, then the mother, Milarepa's mother, cried and said that if your father, Milarepa Gyaltsen, would look upon us, what would he feel? I would rather go and die at this point. So she said that her suffering is the same suffering as that when Milarepa Gyaltsen actually had died.
yume chimse samala shachang pangmi yamna tomo yamyu do chirang norte noramte ngila mi yona metong mami tso mana ma shon yona to ton ser ne chida sonweke karmenamna aku ane karmenamna ton sons ama ni muta ama chundo be watati la lo tene ama ta mambo ngishno tene ngira tadan Milarepa zese ni bo amenyam ngoro ma to shimba kanya chi to shimdos tene ayan ne ta ayan tene ta akul ho mambo kanya chi ko shimdos tene ta Milarepa fonzo la gangan to sama la ala michi meton medos mami so nyingi sama ngondos te hia mambo ze gengo anda to be uren de tene ta nos uren la ba se ta tene chindos 그 안에 니포 가서는 나도 노르미 지나도 노르만 보도 왔어. 저는 뭐 참아라 샤창만 보세 또 뭐야. 저 양양 지나서 노르만 보도 왔어. 저 나이 가서 노르미. 어때? 제 가르쳐 지나도 노르만 보도 왔어. 어때 나피도 없어. 담이 랍 쇼 첨부 주나 저랑 맞아 없었어. 제 총난 또 통소 왔어요. 제 그 안에 만로선스. 그 안에 코란소 간간 중나 말 코란소 냠도 만로시스. So
the mother cried, and Tete and Milarepa consoled her, and they said, there's nothing we can do, because in the end, the paternal uncle has many sons. And also that is why the maternal uncle couldn't stand up to them. So there was nothing that they could do. But then there were a few people who were sympathetic towards them, and they expressed their compassion for us, for Milarepa and his mother and his sister. And then the uncle and the aunt replied to them, like why do you say that you don't have any possessions? You have so many things, and so you have just laid out this feast with meat and beer and invited all these people. So if you ask for your possessions, we don't have them, and even if you have them, we wouldn't give them to you. So what are you going to do? Are you going to wage a war or cast some magic? So they just left them, having said this. And so then the mother sat there crying. And there were some sympathetic to Milarepa and their family, such as the mother's brother and then Tete and her family. And so they stayed behind to console the mother.
我真的我在想不，这些种美国什么时候进的？是真强大嘛？那我们同学阿妈他蛮过我被没骗死，他人呢东这出发过呢，我的东西你得用呢，把过去几大点，真的阿克他安呢你几大点用 service， 我他人呢没忙不多，那时候这就那这我们 jobs 工作的 stage 的，起码阿克安呢你不的 stage 的，是很拉的。
So the mother cried, and that was all after this celebration. So there was still some beer. So they drank the remaining beer and then said to the mother, "Don't cry. It won't help anything. But what we can do is we can beg something from everyone who has gathered here for this feast today, and then we will come back together and see how much we were able to accumulate."
真的，咱们那里边阿阳提开了，不是那阿阳提提开起，咱都混得了原天的sports，原天路边同时，其他买位人也能定这个是，他阿妈的这些人不在，这些是开始别的公司是吧？别的没那里边嘛，有两三个店，你说阿阳才来定这个是，先看的起，这边起没现在看呢。Akuta anen ngo masawa chi gos wat kutan dor du ina akuta anen du ngo masa so ya ko ji gores ngo masa chi so ya ko ji gores nga so wat chi gores america no la wanju ma ju no wa chi be no ko sa ma so nga rang no so mara na da no mo ja do se ti pu so to ma res nga wat la res america ne kun de yon tian lo dons wat kun de yon tian lo dang na de res zong res de ne ma mi tang akuta anen Shama ran machor betena vi mami ak anne yamala machor betena what yapo chi mason den se what yapo chi mason sa ak anne yapo chi mason wonzo kosa.
So then the maternal uncle and then said, so send him, don't just go begging for things, but also you can send away that boy, your son, to learn something, to learn a skill. And meanwhile, the mother and the daughter, so Beta, Milarepa's sister, will come stay with me and work in the fields. And so in this way, you are doing something useful. And so you must not become shameful in the press, in front of everyone, the uncle and the aunt. And so then the mother replied, I have no control over our possessions, and I will not be able to support my children by begging for alms. And the uncle and the aunt had no intention ever to return even just a portion of our wealth. And however, I will do what I can to send my son to learn a skill. And so with that, so then she decided that this is what we're going to do, that she will stay with the brother and Milarepa will be sent to learn something.
真的咱当就都把当就前呢，公你去老我去吧，你先去说那么的个记些。我当当就都把当就是，但那个别忙不啷，来来是不是？当大些，小给我是啷工大，所以呢，我陈律清那个忙不起，弄工作陈律清是，而且阿个呢，我说陈律那个的意思，可能是哈个个意思，老我吃个意思阿个呢是，先看说那么样。那个钱是我先看说那么的钱是我这里捞的，是阿美的捞，是我当个说，你要不钱嘛，算是，我这那都本来忙不着，你是空有事的。
And so then, this took so. Sorry. Let's go. Just so then there was this other saying, a proverb that it goes like that. Then we had to like run at the sound of the drum and run at the rising of the sun, which basically meant they had to work really hard. So they had to get up early in the morning and work until late at night. So with that, what is it? Can you come up? I don't know. Yeah. So from there on, they would work in the fields. So then in an area called Mitugeka, in the area of Tsa, there lived a Nyingma master called Lugyekin. And so I was sent, Milarepa said, speaking of I was sent there to study reading and writing with him. And so while Milarepa was in the Tsa area learning how to read and to write, since there was a great demand for reciting rituals in the villages, I was sent, Milarepa was sent to learn to read and write. And during this time, Tzitzis, the girls and parents, offer some food and other things to the family, and also her family would repeatedly send Tzitze to where Milarepa was studying, just to console him. And the maternal uncle, so the mother's brother, would feed the mother and the sister, so they didn't have to go to beg. But then even though he wouldn't let the mother beg, he did keep her quite engaged. So she was actually working very, very hard, weaving and doing many other things. And so actually it was still not a good time.
Dorjee guna karondo dungar ke tempa putu nyam sige ben zeba ni pa wo so tera chu nya sama be jo menjung de jo xie wo zme menjung jo xie chima tanya mambo do ska ji te karo di sta dungar nyam si dungar de ba nyam si xie res wo ta ce zang ta ce dungar ce so nyam na chi xin de dungar se de na tan kurwa le menjung je ya 我真可把研究界那真的当可把探讨落界给了哇，我真可把探讨落界学了，这对这当个说的Milarepa东亚是用呢，这个点呢，它这个 提点忙不在穷呢。我真的咱们那里把车子在给他全部吃啊，就检测的话，这趟现在在安内就是别弄全部在机有关的东西，刚刚修是这一点，那起码在没那里把你们俩其中就安内你不别各地其中的，他们那里把在你们俩去啊，主要的我在全部安内你不各地的，我这一对安内你不别各地全部的其他的个，那他当然说在确在怎么在当呢？安内你不别都不修这当的，他等下说确在都不是怎么当的，那安内你不别扎的。让我们这边度假休息的，因为你们俩今年在我那在出去要说有人真的可能你不个这点，他们来这上去要个这穷了哇。
So that completes the second deed of Milarepa, the second chapter, which is his encounter with suffering that caused him to give rise to renunciation with samsara. And so this was a time that brought much tear to their eyes and caused much misery. And yet, actually, from the perspective of somebody who really knows how to engage in practice, who knows practice, it is through suffering that they actually develop renunciation to samsara. It is through suffering that a wish to become liberated from samsara arises. And it is through the suffering that Milarepa experienced that his name is still known in the present day. And so actually, so on the one hand, one may see the uncle and the aunt as his adversaries, his enemies, who caused a lot of misery for him and his family. But then on the other hand, from the perspective of a practitioner, the uncle and the aunt actually became a support to his practice. And it was really due to their kindness that Milarepa was able to practice the Dharma the way he did and attain enlightenment in this lifetime.
真的，这当然是东的这个，但那研究的嘛，现在这给我今天 drop 出嘛的，研究的现在等出来这几个，老的我做我这研究差的了。我说你的光是讲呢，他现在我们就刚把人写那么多人说，现在我们就刚把人都要，他做我这研究的，咱可把东可把的那东咱没他去话，来准备这是什么一些情况呢？真的，真的，这现在我们刚把它写，这点那他可把那英国没都。我在英国没对那样做，他上去特别主这么的老师他结婚的哇。
And so if one does not experience suffering, then renunciation will also not arise within one's mind. And if renunciation doesn't arise within one's mind, one will not be able to practice the Dharma in an authentic way. So in order to practice the Dharma in an authentic way, one needs to have renunciation. It is said that renunciation is the legs of meditation. So we develop renunciation if we understand the suffering nature of samsara, if we understand the impermanent nature of things and the nature of death, we're going to die. We understand karma. It is through these reflections that renunciation really arises in our minds. And renunciation then really becomes the legs of our practice. That is when one realizes that samsara has no substance, no essence. And when one decides in one's mind that I'm going to practice in order to attain enlightenment.
真的，他Zumba的，他这无差距吧，是那么多这无差距吧，这热穷，然后热穷去接触了，来拿过切来拿过切的这一种来接触来拿过这一种吧，切的哪区别？通常是吧，一种。我当初是吧，接触当年嘛，他来拿过钱，加入钱是拿软元嘛条，他来拿过的看到钱，他讲来拿过钱是，他看到钱是来从亚洲的。我在接触嘛来的，当年做的是吧，做的是吧，是加倍是，我这种的是，接触通常是吧，老百年轻人吧，既然在穷，我当初是吧，这说家家既然中看到穷松，我当然养家的穷的学的也是。
So then next we come to chapter number 3, which is called the annihilation of enemies. And so in the beginning of this chapter, again, Rinchen asks Milarepa and says, so it is said that you have committed many evil deeds in your life. You have performed good as well as bad deeds. So please tell us how you performed them. How did you perform? How did you commit all these evil deeds? And so Milarepa then responded, I did both good and bad. The evil that I did it through black magic and casting hailstorms and so on. And then Rinchen asked him, so what led you to train in the art of black magic and casting hailstorms?
that's to Jaya to so the Amati, Yansaka. That's so show Jabra. Just Yanka for some Rujuna, Jania Rutumba, or the Jaina, Jai, more Shinia, Copa, Dugo down to near near the Kota Yabochinia, the Ruze, Jimati, Galago, Jania Nikit, Evati to near the Marwonder, Runga, the Usalata. So that the Jano, the Yansaka Jack, to Jago, the Zeta, Sunjun retain, that's it. Milarepa to the Jam, nothing and you chimbo say, or they do, or they are Toronto Charo, Amate, Milarepa, Sanjay Jubiana, Toronto way. Or then I met to take her now, lobby to so Zandar, Jeton, Chansa, Chimbo, Dobe, Chevilla, Lopon Janchang, Chasila, Nachi, then Chamon, Lopon, Sword, Chang Jambach, Mara, Chumi, Unidon with Sefer, Loponji, Nala Joma, Gordy, Mola, Chang Seveki, me Lulanshi, Samla Trodi, Lulanin, Doba, Che Chumik, Cheva demo, you Lulanshi, you was what in that. The Sajatera, Lobion Sisatra, your Lobion Sisat, Chitty, you might say Sajati Jutara, Domo Chimbo Sons, or Domo Chimbo Tichi, that's so that the local Deria Sons Gergant. What the Deria should do then charmable chance was said only charm, the rather city those. What the last city do then the local Dutchland and sons, someone like the Jala court and dancers. Then the Koran can't be taken as the Lulendo shoe to those Konagia or Ramara. The Lulendo issue was a choice in those. Chebas, they were your race, then in those the roast. And you might be a was on one.
So it was really the uncle and the aunt that had caused him kind of. First, it was the mother really who encouraged him to learn the art of black magic, of sorcery, and so. On this level, at this point in time, there was still a division between adversaries and friends, and the black magic was directed toward the adversary of the uncle and the aunt. So it was negative, but then in the end, actually, it did turn into a conducive factor for Milarepa attaining enlightenment. And so that then Milarepa continued with his story. And so he was learning how to read and write in this place called Mutikeka, and together with this master. And so one day, Milarepa accompanied the master to a celebration, a wedding feast. And there was much alcohol to drink. So everyone was offered beer and they all drank. Then, so Milarepa and the master actually were quite drunk on beer. So then the master handed him all the gifts that he had received, all the things, and he wanted to send Milarepa ahead to take them back home. But then, so Milarepa was actually a quite good singer, and because he was drunk, he actually felt a strong desire to sing a song. And so instead of walking away with the master's gifts, he just walked along singing.
Oh, then that Koran can be taken to the Britain. I'm got those that one can be go to it. I make amateur the European, but he go left you the lines. I'm a non name with yours. Name was another share to the native that native make Jati Langas at Euratina. Nelo Neta, but Jupiter was the change of the gun goes the rain of Jisha, the Jupiter, the name of Lagua. What you was. Till I was in 有我些，我是有我先，他在我说，他在没讲在，我先特别，你的这些了，你会给着了，你慢慢都把那啥脱明白，可能热脸没常年的也马起吧，特别，那一把写的下来的些，刚把也写的，有抽用这些，刚把这个啥，他在那个说那边那边刚把这个啥，这一哪把一片去，用片去在这，他有东西在有他钱呢，有我。有我说菜的就是，但是没讲啥都菜着个有，给这都菜，这哪块也用去，哪块也是有花些钱用去，贴瓦钱，这听起来他哪块也把这有把钱用把这贴是去的，这给的麻烦，可当从他把钱不有了吧，给的给人他说麻了，啊，给通话都抢的他，这有我是没来这边东把贴瓦多了，就怕这个我大同是的呢。呀，没他写的这样子，就让我都不能接，就让我都不能接。这样去รับ去，但是但没他的写的这样，像就把他去的都什么都讲那在接。你慢慢也来过了谁张，慢慢有张家人见到什么呢？养通呢？就什么长的阿妈多堂，才成我些都，年年的俺那样，起码忙不去了。你明天你我呢阿妈，哪怕年纪不别给，他这呢家上的篮球呢，我别懂了，这类这边你们让你慢慢种都把它撒脱没，就热量吧，这样吧，俺没得干嘛呢？什么东西也没把的，我说话没把门都，其实没俺的，你没为什么看我说是吧？他今天我去的，他讲说也是，其实你妈他们来贴话这个，就怕是给说下贴什么来的，我就怕听我忙不虚松，这他弄他给我忙。阿妈莫让全把托儿是他个独立提下当，但什么给他就打他这阿妈那就都过去吃，什么我都是，不让了，没来吧，不让嘛不我说，这哪块阿妹哪块都年轻，这全把说啥话下，这全把说都就看来都不，没来写了不讲讲，我听嘛的吧，听嘛的吧，我操，这没来写了讲讲，会都不就那么接，没来写了讲讲就把可能气死都，会都不就那么接。我这女生呢，真的阿妈别全班托送去，真的工作这么提给他大学生当都是，讲你去我现在阿妈做家上了啥个，相对真的，就当我说嘛，什么都是啥托那了要嘛的是，这没得去热量些，他弄去热量些是，那你看对咱们当然我许多都怎么样，咱们没都是，这阿妈提这个老的是。
So then. So Milarepa was actually I'm walking I'm home I'm singing songs, and so the path now his way kind of passed through by his mother's house, and so he walked by his mother's house singing songs, and meanwhile the mother was inside roasting a barley and in a pan, and she heard Milarepa singing, and she wondered, what is this? It just sounds like my son's voice, and how could he be singing though? We are the most miserable beings on this earth. And looking outside, she saw it was indeed her son, and she could hardly believe it. And she was so angry that she took in her right hand the barley, the whisk, which is like a kind of a stick of metal, and then she let the barley burn in the pan, and then she took a handful of ashes in the left hand. It was also quite hot, but she was so upset that she didn't feel it, and she threw the ashes in Milarepa's face, and then she struck him on the head many times with that whisk, with the stick, and she started to cry and scream. How could you do that? Your family your family line probably has been broken by your behavior. Look at our fate. What has happened to us, and now this. And so with that she fainted, she lost consciousness, and then Milarepa's sister came and scolded him and said, what are you thinking? How can you do this? And then the sister started to cry, and so then Milarepa started to cry, and then they were both crying, and he was kind of holding his mother's hand and rubbing his mother's hands as they both cried to make her wake up from having lost consciousness. And then she regained her consciousness and got up, and she said, continued, how can you do this? How can you sing happy songs when there's really no one more pitiful on this earth than our family? So when I think about it, I just feel despair, and all I can do is cry.
Oh, then ama dandi tezamla doba maji. Ngeke ama kandu cha wo chi sta then ameke choran tendu herchung what da chung de yupchen ke da wun de so nya ne mom we par hyu ba che do de then mo da nge yo che ra ke won wan do bi ke tuti se som tar chin ba che lam na aku ane zo be yume chimse rari maga mami la dubo dong kan de nam bu zaba guji ne rap chi ba do te yon do serva用大我用多少啊？他阿妈的学堂进步多么？真的，他觉得，像我那前几年大些都是可是我们当从前中头大的，这这我那时候把伢弄伢使用的当对吧？其实这比较像用啥嘛的啥？那经常在有几次我这用啥的是，我真觉得是吧？就说在当都在这我那时候没那不过来嘛，咱们现在没那不过没把说的，这里嘛咱们当就来啥用多少是啦喏。
So then Milarepa said, please don't be upset. I will do whatever you wish. And so then the mother was actually also a quite angry woman. And so then she replied, okay, well, what I really like you to see doing is to wear a fine robe and ride on a horse and slash the throats of our enemies. But I know this is not going to happen. You won't be able to do that. But at least there is success is still possible with a little bit of treachery. So therefore, I would like you to become an expert in black magic, curses, and casting hail, and inflicting misery on them in this way.
Oh, that's a room to shine and touch us another two singers. I mean, dedication. And you can from one this one.
We have a few questions.
Yeah, okay.
Is there
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, not much change. Yeah, okay.
All right, so
sorry. So now we'll take a question. The question is, can we say this is Milarepa's family's past karma ripening, or are they just a victim of the abusing power of their uncle and aunt?
Cause you may lay the best way.
Tana de kunso do normal bo nyam ba te tini Milarepa ki mitsangun ki le yana ta kara chila son dire sebo kom do yana anti pache dire yana kuranso ta
Babar chela son akene babar kare.
yana kuranso ta o akodang amateri kuranso ta top chembo tini kuranso wang gyone tini do nor gi gyola gi ora ba yana kuranso mitsang chatang ki le tini do nor yungala.
Thing is, I'm not some ladies on the port. I go to the Dongan where today. Jima Milarepa to the goes on Jivangimati, Swaza, Sanji, ladies on the river. Jima, the Zimo that I am watch out wash at the end. One of the days, I reason.
Tini gangan yong de lera mitsang. So yes.
No, ladies.
So yeah, Drupon says that he thinks that it is karma. So the misery that the family and Milarepa experienced is past karma, but also Milarepa has accumulated merit in previous lives because as a result of that, he did attain enlightenment. And actually also his sister later on became a good practitioner.
Is okay? Oh yeah, maybe you can some dedication.
So now we'll read from the prayer book. Do you have it here? Page 17? Page 17, please. gods, holy, venerable, precious, kind, root, and lineage gods, divine assembly of Yadams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Rudins, and Bhaktis dwelling in the directions. Please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three kinds of ourself and all sentient beings in samsara are common, and the eighth root of virtue not result in the eight worldly concerns, the four causes of samsara, or rebirth of Shraddha or Pateka Buddha. They all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachments to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind straight be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhisattva. Through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of states. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of mind as such, and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in Dharmata.
today, what that training also says that Guamja to social on the Jima, this is an cut to Guamja goes. The Emina gets as a lavia, telling good in a G store.
So today we are running a little bit late, so we will not do a meditation, but then next time we're gonna do a little more meditation in between. And also Amy has a few words to say. Actually, she had something to say in the beginning too, but we didn't get to that. So now Amy can say all the things she has to say.
Well, first, thank you so much, Drupon Rinchen Dorjee Rinpoche, for giving us these teachings and inspiring us. We're all very grateful to you for being willing to stay up at this point in time at night and share these wonderful stories with us. Thank you so much for that. And then I really wanted to also thank the Garchen Buddhist Institute, because they were able to connect us with all of you so that we could bring Drupon Rinchen Dorjee's teachings to everyone all over the world. So we're also, I just wanted to thank them as well for sharing your emails with us that you agreed to share. So thank you, Garchen Buddhist Institute. And thank you, Emily Weber, also for helping us get our technology together. So everyone, please bear with us as we're fine-tuning our technology so that we can get Drupon's teachings to you all over the world. You'll now be able to connect with YouTube and watch the videos whenever it's convenient for your schedule. So we hope you're all really happy to be able to connect with Drupon La, because he's just a jewel. And we will be meeting again next week. We'll be in our Vajrayogini retreat. So we'll meet again for the continuing of this 100,000 Songs of Milarepa on the 25th of March.
Ina, Jima sa pasang la chi sha na kandu wana kare sana sa bin ba nga so chusu ti cha ro gro chusu nga ba la ti Dorjee phoma nyam la chi ya sar gra dun ba la 这七项的很多呢，很多其实。
September lah song ye be, yana sa pasang.
300我巴上了，我巴上了。
Pasan chan rogo re kamo?
我们巴上的你啥过的有什么吧？啥过这用个话题，他说泡沫你们去还有吧？你搞的有什么话是呗
？Dede yo mari la song. Dede kyan khati ko sore samsung.
可是别想着像七项呢，我说其实我把是这个话这对吧了？其那家这些就是我
sa pasang la ra?
对，肯定想要的，这当做上大事对吧
？So Drupon is saying that he's thinking that maybe we can still have the teachings next week because the Vajrayogini finishes in the evening at 5, and so if we start at 7 like today, we could still do the teachings. What are you thinking?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
我他参嘛，你嘛啥过节嘛，那种节日是吧？他那种别讲忙不有的，就是然后在推出忙不过个，在推出康特段那种参与起过的，就当那种农具就是这边的把人过去跟对那种拿起农具，别农具就是别要回应是吧？每次刚听那种农具的就听啊，他们开始慢慢，拿起东西给你们，而且有啥没，拿起东西给你去。
Kira nyam to shure?
那种你那去那把人。
Lupa Rinpoche ne.
拿起别把空啊，谁来再去你这，
Beba ko? Are?
别把空嘛些，但拿起参考3点3点了，别把让他张用去，张用没大的评估，我做这个啥子了，属于。
And so
评估我张用这个话，这个啥子了，属于。
And so we see each other again next week, and it's good if we are a bit disciplined with the time because it's quite a long text and a long story, and it will take quite some time. So that's why we should probably also have teachings next week. And so this particular copy of the life story is compiled by Tanya Haruka, and Drupon received the transmission in Lapche, in Lapche from Nuba Rinpoche, and actually there were not many who had received the whole transmission from Nuba Rinpoche. In fact, it was just Drupon himself, and then also the Lapche Dorjee.
我这确实的，当用没来的吧，我这看起来老实些。
And then what's also special about it is that the place where they received the transmission was also the place where Tangyong Haruka actually compiled the 100,000 songs.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's it, right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Drupon.
Goodbye.
Ina. Chilang ni kapa ta. Tapera kapa. You samare kapa ya samare. Yeah, okay, thank you everybody.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have our Vajrayogini retreat next week, so it's on Wednesday. I just put the registration link in the chat, but it starts on Wednesday and goes for 5 days.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.